What would you expect to see at a car boot sale? If you're thinking of some boots in a car, you'd be wrong. Also, we'll give you a first-hand account of second-hand shops in this episode of
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome, especially if you're a new listener to the podcast. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 60 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it up to the next level. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing pretty well, I have to say. I'm enjoying being in full flow. In full flow is like in the middle of something going well. We've already recorded a couple of podcasts, and this is our third, and I'm having a good time. And
Me
you?
too. Yeah, having a lot of fun and refreshed after a lovely coffee and some biscuits. So let's get on with our first order of the day, or the first thing on the list, and that's a voice message from Joshua from Brazil.
Hey guys, Joshua here. I'm from Brazil. I'm a dentist. I love listening to your podcast. You guys help us a lot in developing our English. I used to listen to your podcast while I'm driving, since I work in many cities around here in Paraná. I usually download your podcast, and when I'm at the road, when I hit the road, I usually play them and do my notes, and usually pay much attention in trying to get the best of it. Thank you very much for your effort and your devoted concern about spreading the knowledge of teaching English for us. Very happy to hear from you guys and learn with you. Best wishes.
Well, thank you very much, Joshua. It's lovely to hear from you. You said you listen, you download and you listen to the podcast. You said when I'm at the road. Better to say when I'm on the road. You also said when I hit the road, which is a lovely expression. That's a really nice phrase, which means you start your journey driving. You hit the road and you start listening to the podcast. Thank you.
Yes. And another little thing you said, which you could improve, you said, I used to listen to your podcast while I'm driving, but I think you meant to say, I usually listen, because used to plus a verb is for the past, but you're still doing it right now, right? It's something that you often do. So it should be, I usually listen to your podcast.
And listening while driving is an excellent example of multitasking. What better way to improve your English than to listen to us while you're doing something else? That could be walking the dog, doing exercise in the gym, cleaning your flat, or just like Joshua, commuting to work, driving on the train, on the bus, etc. So a fantastic way to improve your English and make the best use of your time. And speaking of driving and cars, we're going to talk about car boot sales. So first of all, Reza, what is a car boot and what's a car boot sale?
So as Craig said, you won't find boots in the car. It's not about that. We say boot in British English, but you might be more familiar with the American English, which is the trunk. So it's the bit at the back of the car which opens up, where you can store things such as suitcases or sports equipment and that sort of thing.
Dead bodies.
Dead bodies in any good murder mystery film. So you put them in the boot if you're British, or in the trunk if you're an American speaker.
And a car boot sale is when you go to an area of land, usually quite a big area, and people take old things, secondhand things, things that are not new. That's what secondhand means. It's in somebody else's hands. So it's the second hand, it's not new. And you can go there as a buyer to buy things that are on sale, or you can go there as a seller and you can take your old things and sell them to people who go to the car boot sale. And they're very popular in the UK, Reza, aren't they? Have you ever been to a car boot sale?
I have not recently, although I've been to a similar thing. I've been to a market where some people had stalls of things they wanted to sell. They didn't actually have their car, but something similar. I've never actually sold anything at a car boot sale, but I have bought a couple of things. Have you done either or both?
I've done both. I've actually sold twice in two different countries. When I was in the UK and I was going to travel abroad, I needed money to buy a plane ticket. So I got my old games and toys and anything I could find that people might give me money for. And I sold those things in a car boot sale in London and got enough money for my plane ticket to start traveling. And also a bit sad is when my parents died. Obviously, when your parents die, you have lots of things in their house. And some things you keep for sentimental reasons, but there's lots of old clothes and possessions that you really don't want or don't need or don't have space for. So here in Spain, I went to a car boot sale in the area where they lived, where they retired over here. And this area is full of English people, so they know what a car boot sale is. And my sister and I sold all of their old things in the car boot sale.
You know, if you hadn't said, I would have guessed anyway that it was mostly British people at the car boot sale in Spain, right?
Yeah, there were some Spanish people. There were some who lived in the area and they obviously knew what it was and they got used to going every week. So, yeah, but mostly English.
Apart from car boot sales, which happen out in open spaces, you could go to a secondhand shop. So it's a shop, just like any others. But the difference is the things in the shop are not new. They're secondhand. In America, they tend to call it a thrift store. That's THRIFT, thrift. A thrift generally means to be careful with money, to spend money wisely. So buying things secondhand, they'll be cheaper, is one way of being thrifty. So in the United States, they call it a thrift store, and in British English, they call it a secondhand shop.
They don't always sell clothes in these thrift stores or secondhand shops, but that seems to be the main focus, doesn't it? Have you ever bought secondhand clothes anywhere?
I have, not a lot, but from time to time, because I just buy so few clothes anyway, whether first or secondhand. My clothes last a long time. I'm not a fan of having a huge wardrobe, so I've bought plenty of secondhand books and other objects, but not that many clothes secondhand. What about you?
Yeah, the same. I don't tend to buy secondhand clothes, but I'm always curious. In fact, when I was on holiday last month, I looked in a thrift shop that had lots of secondhand clothes just out of curiosity, but they tended to be, they looked old, that they looked worn, and some of them even had some holes. They were not really in good condition, so I don't think I would buy them. Plus, you can buy things new quite cheaply these days, so I don't really see the point of buying something unless it's good quality.
Yeah. Quality, I think, is the only thing that would motivate me to buy secondhand.
But there's lots of vocabulary connected to this idea of car boot sales, secondhand shopping, that kind of thing. So let's look at some words and expressions that we hope will be useful for you. The first one is flea market, F-L-E-A. A flea is a very small fly, isn't it? And flea market is a place where people sell secondhand things or very cheap, inexpensive goods and possessions that you can buy, and that's the flea market, and they're very popular in some Middle Eastern countries.
Yes, I don't know if it's true or not, but in theory, fleas are supposed to like gathering around dirty or kind of squalid areas. And I don't know why, but maybe they call them flea markets because originally, if many centuries ago or many years ago,
Catch fleas.
if you were, there could have been fleas. It would have been second-hand products. 200 years ago, it would have been pretty squalid, and then there might have been a lot of fleas around. That may be the reason why we call them flea markets.
Yeah, that makes sense. A charity shop is obviously a shop owned by a charity. So they raise money and try to collect money by selling things that are donated. And often people give them old clothes and other items, and then they sell them and the money goes to a good cause, something like Save the Children or Oxfam.
I was going to say these days, but I'm going to revise that and say until very recently, because I've noticed a slight change, but until very recently, most British high streets, that means the main commercial street or area of a city, had loads of charity shops.
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary. Nearly all British towns in very, very important areas have charity shops. I've noticed, though, in Belfast, which is the city I know best, the number has started to fall a little bit. It seems to have passed its peak, but just very recently. Still, there are a lot of charity shops, whereas in most Spanish cities, I wouldn't know where the charity shops are. In the UK, you just have to go down to the high street and you'll see about 5 or 10 in no time at all, right?
Do you think it depends on the area, though? Do you notice, especially in your area, that the poorer communities have more charity shops because people don't have so much money?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think it is anyway.
Or maybe in the more affluent or richer areas, people tend to give things away easier because they have the money to buy new things. So there's more things available to sell in richer areas.
I've noticed that in richer areas, the charity shops sell better stuff. Yeah, no, really.
Better quality.
People travel to the richer areas to go to specific charity shops, really.
There's an expression which I hadn't heard before, but we'll include it here because it's connected to flea markets that I mentioned earlier, and that's a swap meet. To swap means to exchange. So I give you one thing, you give me another. And a swap meet, according to the internet, is a more common expression in the western part of the United States for a flea market. So if you hear there's a swap meet in the area, that means there's a flea market. You can go and buy some cheap secondhand things.
Now, on a smaller scale, you might have a yard sale. So a yard is a small area beside your house, in front of your house, or behind your house. So when you sell unwanted items in front of your house, usually on the lawn, or it might instead of grass, it might be a concreted area. You call that a yard sale. So that'll be just one individual family or person rather than a collection of people. It's not so common in the United Kingdom, but it's fairly common in America to have a yard sale.
And a similar event is a garage sale, or if you're very posh and come from a rich area, a garage sale. And that's similar to a yard sale, but it's held in or near your garage. And yard sales and garage sales are very common when someone's moving house. For example, maybe they're moving to a smaller property and they want to sell some of their possessions and furniture.
A word very often used for secondhand items and clothes within families, particularly, is hand-me-downs. Yeah, so 3 words stuck together with 2 hyphens, little lines in the middle, hand-me-downs. They are usually clothes passed on from one person to another. It doesn't have to be a family member, but very often it is. So there'll be no money involved. Simply you get something from somebody because it's no longer useful for them. That's a hand-me-down.
Did you get hand-me-downs from one of your brothers?
Yes, I certainly did. Classic British things such as school uniforms, because they're quite expensive. So if you've got an older brother or sister, they were theirs. Then a couple of years later, if you're a couple of years younger than them, then you were it.
Yeah. Hand-me-downs. If something is old, but it's quite stylish and desirable, so you really want it, it looks attractive, you could call it vintage. So you can see maybe something for sale that's a vintage watch, for example. And it often collocates with car. A vintage car is an old car. It's not modern, but it's very attractive and stylish.
I've noticed that in Spain, nearly all of the secondhand clothes stores, they refer to them as vintage. They do it the French way, which seems to elevate the status. If you use the French pronunciation, then it's better.
Sounds better, yeah.
Doesn't it? Yeah. So in Spain, it was certainly in Valencia, as I'm sure you know, Craig, most secondhand stuff is fairly good stuff. It won't be ordinary clothes. It'll be of a strange or a specific era or style. There'll be something unusual about it, something desirable about it. It won't just be a tracksuit from Primark from 2 years ago. No, people in Spain don't want to buy that. They want to buy a kind of very peculiar 1970s jacket.
Exactly.
That's when you go to the vintage, or as the Spanish say, vintage store.
Also, vintage wine is a common collocation, isn't it? You get a good wine that's aged well, you can call it a vintage. Antique is a similar word. An antique is an old object, often quite valuable or collectible. So you can spend quite a lot of money on antique furniture, antique watches and clocks, etc.
Craig just used the word collectible as an adjective. He said that some objects are valuable or collectible. It can also be a noun. A collectible then are items that people collect, such as toys, coins, or stamps. They are collectibles. So you can make that word plural when it's a noun. Remember, in English, adjectives never change. It doesn't matter if it's singular or plural. So, for example, a collectible car or two collectible cars. We don't put an S on the word collectible when it's an adjective. But I could say, I have two collectibles. I'm using it as a noun. Then I do put an S when it's plural.
And some people collect those Star Wars characters, don't they? Those small models or those bobbleheads with the big head that moves. You can call those collectibles. You used to collect empty bottles of whiskey, didn't you?
Yeah, I used to like them just if they looked nice, and maybe use them as candlestick holders.
Yeah, sounds so much better than alcoholic, doesn't it? Someone who collects empty bottles of whiskey.
A good way of explaining it away. How did the bottle become empty? Oh, I don't know about that.
Let's take a quick break here, because I know you listen to this podcast to take your English to the next level. But what about your speaking? Is your fluency improving? Are you happy with your speaking skills? My conversation course focuses on making you a more confident and more fluent English speaker. You'll join me and a small group of motivated students, and we'll meet on Zoom and have topical discussions, role plays, debates, and presentations that will expand your vocabulary and help you express yourself effectively in English. So be proactive and take the first step towards becoming a confident and fluent English speaker. Send me an email today to craig@inglespodcast.com and I'll send you details of the next online conversation course. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the podcast. Trinket is our next word. A trinket, T-R-I-N-K-E-T. You can see all of these words with short definitions over on the webpage. Go to inglespodcast.com/589 to see the show notes. And a trinket is a small ornament or a piece of jewellery, and it doesn't usually have a lot of value. So quite cheap things, but they're attractive, maybe small ornaments around the house or pieces of jewellery.
A similar word is knickknacks with a hyphen in the middle. The spelling is with silent K. So KNICK hyphen, the little line, KNACK, and plural with the S, knickknacks. And similar to trinkets, they're small decorative objects, and they're often cheap or perhaps quirky. QUIRKY. If something is quirky, it's kind of not common, it's unusual. That doesn't mean that it's really valuable, it's just a little bit different.
That's a nice way of saying weird, isn't it? Quirky.
Yeah. So quite often knickknacks are quirky. Not always, but sometimes.
And similar words for trinkets or knickknacks, bric-a-brac, that's another word you might come across or meet or see when we're talking about this kind of thing. Odds and ends is a common expression. Bits and pieces, another one. All of those expressions mean a miscellaneous or mixture of small objects of little value. So you'll often see bric-a-brac, odds and ends, bits and pieces at car boot sales.
Let's be honest, a lot of the stuff, some of the stuff at car boot sales or even charity shops is junk. It's unwanted. It's unwanted or perhaps low value items. And so when we use the word junk, we're usually being negative. Not always, but it tends to have a negative connotation. Imagine I go to a charity shop and I come home and my friend asks me, well, did you buy anything in the charity shop? And I say, no, it was all junk, to be honest. I didn't really like it. It wasn't of any value to me.
Junk food, yeah, that's usually negative, isn't it?
Now, a good strategy in some flea markets or even any other types of markets, possibly even food markets in certain countries around the world, is to haggle. HAGGLE. And that means to negotiate or to bargain, that's another way of saying it, over the price. So imagine I'm at a car boot sale and I see some bric-a-brac and there's something that catches my eye I quite like, and I say, how much for that? And they say £5, and I say, wow, £5.
You must be joking.
I'll give you £1. They say, what? You know, I could sell it for £5 easily. I tell you what, I'll give it to you for £3. And I say, well, £2.50, that's my final offer. And they say, okay. So we haggled. One person went up, the other person went down, and we met in the middle over the price.
Do you like haggling or 'cause some people like doing it? Some people, my wife hates haggling when we go on holiday. I'm usually the haggler and she just pays the price if she can afford it that people ask.
I don't like doing it, but I'm prepared to do it, particularly when I know that it's the kind of atmosphere that people do it. I'm not going to be a fool who just arrives. They say €5 and I pay it because I know they're going to give it to me cheaper. So I don't enjoy it, but I will do it. Yeah, I'll do it.
I enjoy it. I like it. I really enjoy it, especially if it's the culture of the country I'm in, and do it with a smile, enjoy it. It's a game. And it's enjoyable.
Do you like the bit when quite often the seller pretends to be offended that you won't give them the price? Some of them are really good at it. They go, oh, what? You offer me that for that? How dare you? But it's all a play. It's like they look all offended and everything, you know?
Yeah, and I do the same thing. I pretend to walk away and then come back. When they call, no, sir. They come back and we talk about another price. It's fun. If you're haggling, if you're walking around and we can say browsing the bric-a-brac and the odds and ends in a flea market or a cart boot sale, you could be on a bargain hunt. A bargain hunt. A bargain is something that's good value for the money or the price you pay. So if you get a bargain, that's very good because you've bought something for less than it's worth. And you're very happy. And if you're hunting for a bargain, you're on a bargain hunt. You're looking for the best deals or the lowest prices.
I wouldn't call myself a huge bargain hunter, but I do like getting a bargain. So I don't always go looking for bargains, and particularly car boot sales and flea markets, I don't go that often. But I do like getting a bargain just in a normal shop. If there's a product that I need, it's important in my life, and I know the price varies, I'm kind of quite obsessive about always checking prices in new places. For example, I'm putting a lot of moisturizer on my skin at the moment. It's very dry. And I've seen that the price of this product I like varies wildly. The difference can be for one tub about €5 or €6. So I must admit now, every single time I stop at a pharmacist or a similar shop that sells it, I must go in and look at the price because I think, oh, if I can save €6, I'm going to. So I do like getting a bargain.
So you dig through the products. If the phrasal verb to dig through, what Reza does when he's looking for a bargain, means to search through boxes or maybe piles of secondhand moisturizing creams.
Not secondhand moisturizing cream. Come on, that's taking it too far.
You can't get it back in the tube, can you? So to dig through means to search for something. And a similar verb is to rummage, rummage. If you're rummaging through something or rummaging, you're searching in a careless or maybe a busy way through some items.
And you might get lucky and you might come across something. Another phrasal verb like dig through, to come across, you find something of interest by chance. You weren't even looking for it. You just came across it while rummaging.
And while you're rummaging and looking through things and haggling with the seller, you might hear the expression from the seller, it's almost new. Now, if something is completely new, if you buy it in a shop and it's still in the box, and the box is closed and it's sealed, it's brand new. So it's unused, it's unopened, it's brand new. And of course, something secondhand has been used, but something could be almost new. So it might have been removed from the box and maybe tested, but not actually used for a long period and put back in the box and sent back to the company. So if something is almost new, it's used to describe a second-hand item that's in very good condition.
Another common collocation, that's two words going together, is hidden gem. So a gem is a precious stone, but a hidden gem could be anything. It doesn't have to be a stone. It simply means something valuable or special, but found unexpectedly, perhaps in a car boot sale. Perhaps you find an antique worth lots of money, but the person selling it doesn't know it, and they're selling it at a very cheap price. Well, that would be a hidden gem, for example.
Have you ever found any hidden gems, Reza, in a thrift store or in a flea market or boot sale?
Not really, to be honest. No. Have you?
I can't remember. I don't think so. But I do have a friend who lives in France who has a hobby of traveling around the country to these antique fairs and car boot sales in the hope of finding hidden gems. And I visited his house a couple of times, and it's full of really interesting artifacts and antiques and old things. Some may have value, maybe some not, but they're all very interesting. So that's his hobby. He travels around the country looking for hidden gems.
And of course, the main thing is that the buyer gets pleasure from the object, because one man's trash is another man's treasure. What one person doesn't want, another might. Craig's friend in France might have things in his house which give him pleasure. He likes looking at them, but we might look at it and think, "Oh, it looks awful." But that's not the point. It's the buyer who obtains pleasure or not from what they buy, depending on their opinion.
That reminds me of when I went to that car boot sale to sell my parents' possessions after they died, and they had this clock that used to be next to the bed. And one man came to us, and I was with my sister, and he picked up the clock and he was looking at it, and he said, "Does this clock work?" And I said, "Yes, of course it works." And he looked a bit disappointed. And I said, "Is that not good?" He said, "Well, I have a hobby. I like to repair old clocks and watches." And I said, "Well, if you buy it, I'll break it for you." You didn't buy it.
Wow. It takes all sorts. So, Craig, why do you think that secondhand shopping has become more popular in recent years, especially among young people?
Well, you mentioned that you noticed in your area maybe it has lost a bit of popularity, but I think it goes
This is
with
Belfast I'm talking about.
In Belfast, yeah. But I think it's a lot to do with fashion trends because especially young people, they like to follow fashion, and obviously they don't tend to have a lot of money if they're students. So obviously secondhand clothes are cheap, but they might be making a statement against fast fashion. The idea that slave and child labor is used in some countries to make cheap clothes and then sell to people in the West. So maybe it's a statement against consumerism, buying secondhand clothes and not giving money to these big companies. What do you think?
Yeah, that could definitely be part of it. Yeah. By the way, I've just remembered, someone explained to me perhaps one of the reasons why the number of charity shops so visible in the high streets of the United Kingdom has started to fall a little bit is that government laws have changed. Apparently, charity shops used to get great reductions or benefits for rent and leases.
And they don't pay tax, do they?
Yeah, but the government recently changed the law, so now it's not so good for them. So that might explain why the numbers have dropped a little bit, not a lot. That might be part of it in the UK. But they're still very, very popular in the UK. And why is that? I mean, compare the number of charity shops in a typical British city to Spain. There are so many more. Why are they so popular in Britain, do you think, Craig?
I think it's part of the culture, isn't it? It's ingrained, you could say, in the British culture. And I think it comes from the 1940s where the Red Cross started charity shops because there was a lot of social economic pressure and poverty in the British society in the 1940s and 50s. So I think the Red Cross in the UK started this trend of secondhand shops and it just grew from there. So it's much more part of the British culture, I think, than the Spanish culture. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. An integral part.
Reza, what is the appeal of these vintage stores? I mean, the items for sale tend to be old and dated, old-fashioned. So why not buy something new and trendy?
Well, I think that's it. The answer is in your question, really. People who don't want something new and trendy specifically go there because you will get something with a certain historical appeal, something which is clearly a typical design of the 1960s or 70s or 80s will stand out and be different from the typical stuff these days. So I think the whole point is people want it to look dated.
Yep, the retro fashion idea can be trendy. Vinyl records coming back, of course, they're quite old. Just thinking about the last question about why there aren't so many in Spain. And I thought of shops that sell very, very cheap Chinese goods, mainly run by Chinese people. Maybe it doesn't make sense to put a secondhand store when you can go to a Chinese-run store and buy really cheap clothes and really cheap items from China.
That's true. And the UK, we don't really have many of those, do we? Or not so many?
Not so common, no.
Yeah. We have a couple of big chains, but as you say, in Spain, they tend to be family run by Chinese families, don't they? Although I remember when I first arrived to Spain, most of them was still run by Spanish people.
Yes, and they're kind of taken over.
It was about 25 years ago that the takeover happened, right?
Yeah, we had one in our area where the woman was complaining because a Chinese shop had opened next to her or very close to her, and they were open longer hours, they were open weekends, they were working really hard, and they were putting her out of business. If you put a shop out of business, the customers go to you, they don't go to the other shop. So I said, well, maybe you should think of opening more hours to compete. But she closed.
Craig, some people see secondhand items as cheap, and that's it, while others see them as sustainable or stylish. Why do you think there are different attitudes? What influences these different attitudes?
Probably social status. I mean, we mentioned students before. They'd be very happy maybe to lean on sustainability and say that they're more stylish because they can't afford more expensive clothes. And then obviously if you're a high society person, you could say, oh no, I couldn't possibly wear secondhand clothes. How disgusting. So you might have that social class attitude. Do you think so?
Yeah, I think that's what it is basically.
But what's your view? Now it's your turn to practice your English. Any opinions or views on secondhand? Have you bought any secondhand items recently? We would love to hear about it. Send us a voice message. How can people do that, Reza?
The easiest way is probably through speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. There's a link in the show notes. However, if you prefer to write, you could send us an email to craig@inglespodcast.com, or to me, that's belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're a Spanish speaker and you want to improve your English with free and paid resources, visit the Mansion Ingles website over at mansioningles.com. And if you're interested in paid products to help you improve your English, you can browse the online store, which is not a thrift store. It's an online store of new products at mansioningles.net.
Nothing secondhand there.
Nothing secondhand.
As always, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. That's Patreon. They are people who make a small donation by joining the Patreon program. And as a way of saying thank you for their donation, they get instant access to the audio transcriptions of the podcast. And now, as an added little extra, the chance to sign up for live Zoom chats with Craig so that they can practice their speaking a little bit more. If you're interested, have a look. There's a link in the show notes to patreon.com/Ingles podcast.
And we can't thank everybody who's supporting us. There just isn't time, but we will say hello and thank you to our new Patreon supporters who have joined us recently. And they are Jesus Villamajo, Sara Fernandez, Chaparas, or Marvin. Thanks, Marvin. Amparo Soto, Juanma, and friend of the show, Carmen Roldan. Thank you, Carmen. Also, Maria Elisa Alvarez Torres and Pedro. Thank you to one and all of our lovely Patreon supporters.
Yes, thanks everybody.
What's next week, Reza?
Next week, we're going to talk about uses of light.
So turn on the light and join us next week. Thank you for listening this week. It's been wonderful to have your company. Have a great week. And until next time, it's goodbye from Reza.
And bye-bye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.